It was a quiet, heavy evening. The kind where even the wind seemed too tired to blow. Tolu stepped into his home that night. The aroma of freshly prepared dinner filled the air, but his heart was too heavy to feel any comfort. His heart was heavy with thoughts, heavier than ever. His wife Sarima, who had just finished preparing his favorite dish, was setting up the dining table. But tonight, nothing made Tolu feel at home. It only made his chest tighten with guilt. Sarima welcomed him with her usual soft smile and served his food on the table. Her kindness felt like a sharp thorn in his chest, because he knew he was about to break her heart. They sat down at the dining table, facing each other, and began eating in silence. The silence between them was louder than any scream. Tolu stared at his wife. She looked tired, not physically, but emotionally. The kind of tiredness that comes from being too strong for long. He slowly reached out for her hand and held it calmly. With a voice low and uncertain, he said,
"I have something to tell you."
Sarima didn't reply. She continued eating calmly. Tolu watched her, unsure of how to continue. The words he had practiced over and over in his head suddenly disappeared. The courage he thought he had was nowhere to be found. But he had to say it. His mind was made up already. Finally, he took a deep breath and said it calmly but clearly.
"I want a divorce."
Sarima didn't flinch. She didn't scream or cry. She simply placed her spoon on the plate and looked at him directly.
"Why?"
she asked calmly. Tolu looked away. He couldn't answer her. How could he explain that his heart now belonged to another woman, Amina? That somewhere along the line, he had stopped loving his wife. Instead of answering, he looked down. Sarima waited. When he didn't answer, the silence crushed her. Her calm broke. She stood up in anger and said,
"You are not a man!"
she shouted, her voice trembling with pain and not rage. The room felt silent again, her words echoing in the air like thunder. Tolu said nothing, he just stared at her. The rest of the night passed in painful silence. They didn't speak to each other. Sarima cried alone in the bedroom, her tears soaking into her pillow. She wanted answers, a reason, anything to make sense of the wreckage of their marriage. But Tolu had none. He sat in the living room, staring at the ceiling. He felt her pain and he pitied her. He no longer loved her. Pity was all he could offer her. The warmth, the spark had faded, slowly, painfully, until only emptiness remained. It wasn't that Sarima had done something wrong. She had been loyal. She had been kind. She had been everything a wife should be, but his heart no longer belonged to her. It belonged to another woman, Amina, someone who made him feel alive again. And in his mind, the only way forward was to let go of Sarima, even if it shattered her. The next day, filled with guilt, Tolu sat in his office and drafted a divorce agreement. It was generous. She could keep the house, the car, and even 30% of his company. He had thought that if he gave her everything, maybe the pain will hurt less. Maybe she will feel appreciated. Maybe it will help her move on. He thought it would make things easier for them, as he was also trying to ease his guilt. When he returned home, he handed the paper to Sarima without saying a word. Sarima didn't even read them. She just glanced at them briefly, then tore the paper into pieces in front of him. She walked away without a word. That moment hit Tolu harder than expected. This was the woman who had been his world for 10 years, the woman who had cooked for him, prayed with him, held him through struggles, bore his child and built a home with him. Now she was walking away like a stranger. He felt a pang of guilt for the years she had given and spent with him. But he couldn't take back his words. His heart was now with Amina. Days passed like slow-moving shadows. The silence between them became a daily routine. Tolu avoided her eyes. He buried himself in work during the day, and in Amina's arms during evenings. At home, the only sounds were the rustling of their son's school bag and the occasional clatter of the dishes from the kitchen. Then one night, something changed. While their son Sebastian was at his grandparents' place, Tolu sat in the living room pretending to read a magazine when he heard soft sobbing coming from the room. He paused, lowered the magazine and listened. It was Sarima. She was crying, not quiet, controlled weeping he had had before. This time, it was raw, loud, and deep. The kind of cry that cracks a heart open and bleeds everything out. He didn't go to her. He sat still, numb, letting her grief fill the house like a smoke. A part of him had been expecting this. He had been waiting for her to break down, to cry. In a strange, cruel way, he saw her tears as a sign of relief, a sign that she was ready to let go, a proof that the divorce was now real. The next day, Tolu came home and found Sarima writing on the table. She didn't look up. He didn't speak to her either. He went straight to bed, exhausted after another day with Amina. In the morning, Sarima handed him a paper. It wasn't a divorce agreement. It was a list of her conditions. Tolu, surprised, took the paper and began to read. She didn't want the house. She didn't want the car. She didn't want his company shares or his money. She wanted nothing material from him. She only had one request. A 1-month delay before the divorce. Her reason was their only son Sebastian had important school exams coming up. She didn't want him to be disturbed by their broken marriage. She wanted to protect his peace, even if her own world was crumbling. She asked Tolu to pretend that everything was normal, just for 30 days. Tolu agreed. It was the least he could do. But Sarima had one more request. She asked him to carry her out of their bedroom to the front door every morning, just like he had carried her into their new home on their wedding day. Tolu couldn't believe his ears. What kind of request was this? Her request sounded strange, almost foolish. Was she joking? Was she trying to embarrass him? He looked at her like she had lost her mind. But her face was calm, not angry, not playful, just calm. He didn't understand it, but he agreed, thinking maybe it was just her way of coping. Maybe it was her way of holding on to the past one last time. Or maybe, deep down, it was her way of saying goodbye in a way he would never forget. Tolu had agreed out of guilt and a strange sense of responsibility. He didn't understand it yet, but this one request would change his life forever. When he told Amina about Sarima's conditions, she laughed mockingly.
What kind of trick is that? Let her cry, scream, or even dance. You are still going to divorce her.
Tolu didn't respond, he just stared at her. The next morning, Tolu carried Sarima out. They were both stiff and uncomfortable. Their son Sebastian clapped joyfully from behind them.
Daddy is holding mommy in his arms.
The word stabbed Tolu in the heart. He hadn't expected it to hurt this much. As they reached the front door, Sarima whispered,
Please don't tell our son about the divorce.
Tolu nodded and gently set her down. She left for work, taking the bus, just as she has been doing for months. While Tolu drove away, he used to drive her to work every morning but stopped when his heart drifted away and she never asked him why. By the second day, they moved a bit naturally. Sarima rested her head on his chest. He smelled her familiar fragrance, soft, clean and comforting. He realized he hadn't looked at her closely in years. There were tiny wrinkles around her eyes. A few strands of gray hair had begun to show in her hair. She had aged quietly, lovingly, right beside him. The years had taken their toll, and he hadn't noticed. Each day carrying her got a bit easier. Not just physically, but emotionally. By the fourth day, he felt a strange warmth returned. The act of carrying her brought back memories of their early days, laughter, struggles and love. He didn't tell Amina about it. Something has begun to shift in his heart. One morning, Sarima stood in front of the mirror, trying different dresses but none seemed to fit. She sighed.
All my dresses have grown bigger.
Tolu, who happened to be passing by at that moment, saw her. He stood at the door, watching. It hit him, she had grown thinner. That's why it was easy to carry her. She had been hurting silently. He walked in and gently touched her head. She leaned on his chest without resistance. Sobestein entered.
Dad, it's time to carry Mom.
Sarima hugged the boy tightly, her eyes filled with emotion. Tolu turned his face away, afraid that he might change his mind. As he carried her that day, her arms wrapped around his neck like old times. She rested her head on his shoulder. Her body was light, too light. On the final day, the 30th morning, everything felt heavier, emotionally and physically. Sobestein had left for school. Tolu reached out for Sarima again. But this time, as he lifted her, he could barely take a step. The weight wasn't in her body, but in his heart. He looked into her eyes and said with a trembling voice,
I hadn't noticed that our marriage lacked intimacy.
Sarima smiled. A small, tired, understanding smile. She didn't say anything, her silence said everything. That day, Tolu drove straight to Amina's office. He rushed upstairs without bothering to lock his car door. His heart was racing. He didn't want to delay, not for a second. He knocked on the door, Amina opened the door and was surprised to see him as he didn't tell her that he was coming like he always do.
I'm sorry, Amina. I don't want a divorce anymore.
Amina blinked, confused and shocked.
Are you okay? Do you have fever?
She asked, touching his forehead. Tolu quietly moved her hand away.
I'm okay. I just finally realized something. My marriage wasn't boring because we stopped loving each other. It became boring because we stopped noticing the little things. We stopped appreciating the details that made us fall in love in the first place. I carried her into our home on our wedding day. I promised to hold her until death do us apart. That wasn't just a ceremony. That was a vow, and I'm going to keep it.
Amina slapped him hard on his face. She slammed the door in tears. Tolu didn't care. He walked out without looking back. As he drove away, he felt strangely free, lighter and clearer. He didn't regret it. Not for a second. He had finally remembered what love was supposed to feel like, sacrificial, attentive, and deeply personal. And for the first time in a long while, he knew exactly what he had to do. He stopped at the flower shop on his way home and bought a bouquet of flowers. On the card, he wrote, I will carry you out every morning until death do us apart. He smiled, excited to give it to Sarima. He raced home, flowers in his hands, heart full of hope. He had made up his mind, he would be a better man. A better husband. A present father. Everything was going to change. He went upstairs and opened the bedroom door, only to find his wife lying on the floor, lifeless. His world crumbled. The bouquet slipped from his hands and he rushed to her side. He shook her gently, calling her name over and over, begging her to open her eyes, to breathe, to smile, anything. But she was gone. Sarima was truly gone. He later discovered from her doctor that she had been battling cancer for months. She knew her time was short. But never told him. She didn't want to burden him. Instead, she wanted to leave behind a beautiful memory for their son, the memory of a father who loved and cared for his mother. She didn't want their son to grow up thinking his father abandoned them. She endured, silently. She hid her pain behind soft smiles. She used her last strength not to save herself but to protect Tolu's image in their son's heart. Even in death, she gave him dignity. Even in her final moments, she gave him love. Tolu was never the same again. He cried like a child for weeks. He wandered through the house replaying their moments, her laughter, her cooking, the way she used to gently brush their son's hair, the way she always waited up for him, no matter how late he came home. He blamed himself for being blind. For chasing after another woman when the love he needed was right beside him. He blamed himself for every word he didn't say. For every hug he didn't give. For every morning he walked past her without truly seeing her. His heart was shattered, not just from the loss, but from guilt. He vowed that he would never remarry. Instead, he chose to devote the rest of his life to raising his son, to becoming the kind of man Sarima would have wanted him to be. Every morning, he whispered a prayer for her. Every evening, he told their son stories about his mother, strong, loving, beautiful, and selfless. And every day, he kissed a framed photo of Sarima on the wall and whispered,
I will carry you, even in memory, until death do us apart.
It's the small things in life that matter, the little habits, the unspoken moments, the quiet acts of love. Not the house, not the money. These things can bring comfort, but they can never bring true happiness. So, pay attention to your spouse, notice the quiet strength of your partner. Say thank you. Appreciate them. Ask them how they are doing, and really listen. Carry their burdens even when they don't ask. Show them that they matter. Never take them for granted, because sometimes, when you finally realized, it may be too late. So, love them with action, not just words. Because true love is not found in wealth, cars, or houses. It's found in the little moments, the one we often overlook, but that matters the most. And when you love deeply, love like Tolu finally did. Carry them, with your arms, with your heart, with your presence. Until death do you apart. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please leave your thoughts in the comment section and also do well to share with your family, friends, in fact, all your loved ones. Something good is always coming, so please stay tuned for more interesting and amazing story from this channel.
Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe to Hopela Stories.